In today's Warcrow topic, we are going to be talking about Verena of Aurtigard, High Priestess of Selas, who is a named High Command character that is part of the Feudum faction in Warcrow. So, we got a lot of stuff to kind of go over, but first and very obvious, Verena is the High Priestess of the Order of Selas. And she got her position thanks to the influence of her grandfather. Now, we talked about her grandfather before. He is Maxence of Aurtigard, Duke of Aurora, and he was briefly mentioned in the Night of the Sacred Relic video because their kind of temple, their sanctuary, is located on an island in his duchy. He's also interestingly known as the Son of the Witch. I don't really know what that's about. When I kind of look through the lore book, people kind of they say he's like a shrewd fox. He's very good politically at like navigating things, so I'm kind of curious to see what that's all about with him. Anyway, we also need to kind of talk about what the Order of Selas is. So the Order of Selas is a religious order focused on protecting their allies, either through healing and supportive magic or through impeding their enemies. So they're very focused on kind of like the healing aspect of combat, but also they're not, afraid to throw down if they need to. And so what's really interesting is because it's the feudum, right? So we have peasants and nobles. Members of the Order of Selas come from all social classes, so they don't distinguish. They don't really care. But what they do care about is that they need to be in good physical condition. So most of their candidates, most of the people that try to join are girls, but all who try to join need to be in good physical condition. And this is because many of the days, once they kind of go into this order, are going to be filled with hard, intensive trainings. And so they just need to be kind of ready for that. They don't want somebody who's not going to be able to keep up of joining their ranks, because it is a very tough ordeal to go through. And so many of the faithful come to watch those who make it to the admission ceremony. It says within the lore that it takes place on the coast, where these individuals who are getting accepted cross the isthmus of Plemar at sunset, which means that they arrive on the island of Asail, which is kind of like the big island in Lindworm. You can see it in like the top right of the map at night. And so they arrive at night, which means that they are illuminated by the moon goddesses, which works very well for a religious order that worships the moon goddesses. There they spend the rest of their days in the monasteries of Alvine, where they grow in their faith and skill sets until they become ordained priestesses. We've talked about Morgane of Joffret, and we're talking about Verena of Aurtigard, two of their kind of most prestigious priestesses. So back to Verena. She has been very publicly vocal about her distrust of the Sempiternus since her beginnings in the order. We've talked about Sempiternus a few times. You could check out the Mace Escort video. You can also check out Amory Boissonade video. We talk about him there. He, in turn, does not hide his animosity towards her either. He is functionally her boss in kind of to give you kind of a tangential idea, he kind of is like the Pope in like the hierarchy of their religion, in the sense that he is like the big dog. So the only person that I would say that can kind of rival him is like the king of the feudum, or the queen, whoever the ruler is of the feudum. But the Sempiternus is like the religious leader of the feudum. And so Verena, and then we talked about Amory Boissonade, they both work for him, and Verena is the head of the Order of Selas. We also have Pierre Besson, who is the head of the Order of Losna. He's the Grand Magister. He also doesn't really like Verena, but he's also kind of a pencil pusher and wants to get in the good graces of the Sempiternus. So the Sempiternus is kind of doing a lot of really suspicious things. We'll talk about it in a little bit. Verena is like, no, dude, you might be the big dog, but you're whack, and what you're doing is crazy. And so despite people preying on her downfall, she's very intelligent, shrewd, and cunning. So she has she's been able to work out and outmaneuver any of their kind of political schemes or lethal schemes that her opponents try to throw at her, any subterfuge or anything like that. And it said that she is protected by secrets and info her grandfather holds. I think that's very interesting. Once again, people kind of talk about him in like hushed tone, so I don't really know what this guy's deal is. I think he's kind of one of the big dogs, to be honest. But he's got dirt, I guess, on people, or blackmail or something. So one, she's protected by that, right, the legacy of her grandfather, but also her faith in Selas is considered to be unmatched. She achieves great powers through her prayers to Selas. She's like a level 20 cleric, so she is incredibly powerful, and she has a good relationship with Selas. And going back to the Sempiternus and Verena, the last big event that occurred, like just so you guys can kind of understand the Sempiternus and what he's trying to do, or at least what they're alluding to what he's doing. Once again, him and Verena remind me a lot of like Padme and Palpatine, right, from Star Wars. Like just like these two kind of big political figures, kind of knocking, right, running into each other. And so the Sempiternus, in one of the lore snippets, right before kind of the narrative event of Winds from the North takes place, tries to gain power within the feudum that would allow him to alone pick the next monarch of the kingdom. So normally, I think it's like all the lords of the region, the dukes and the different leaders of the duchies, the lords and ladies, they kind of, obviously the monarch will go to the next in line, but they can also pick. The Sempiternus was trying to do it where he could be the only one responsible for picking. And when he brought this up to the king was like, no, dude, like that's whack and you're crazy. But he tried to push it through their parliament anyway, and they were actively having a vote that seems like it was going in favor of the Sempiternus, when the doors busted open and a courier came in saying that the orcs in the Varank of the northern tribes had attacked Aurtigard, which is on the borders and boundaries of feudal lands, and that stopped that political movement. So the Sempiternus is trying to grab power. I've mentioned he's trying to grab power, and Verena is trying to like whistleblow and be like, everybody, like this is not okay. So I'm just really curious to see kind of this. This is one of my favorite political intrigue parts of Warcrow and in Limworm, is kind of what's going on there. So why is Verena cool? She is one of my kind of more favorite characters. I've always been fascinated by clerics because they are like basic support. People don't want to play healers and clerics and stuff, in video games, because they're just basic support characters, but they end up having like these big swings. They're like the big hitters in the long run. And one of my favorite stories comes out of the feudum section and involves directly Verena. The fog recedes from a village. I'm going to keep it kind of vague-ish, but the fog recedes from a village, and this like angelic frail girl just appears out of the fog, and so some of the people bring her to the town, and all of a sudden she goes from being like angelic, just like the girl from The Ring, and just completely horror, and she like her neck snaps back, her eyes start glowing, and she just starts screaming like this blood-curdling scream, and like black liquid is oozing out of her eyes and nose and fingernails and stuff, and people are like dying. It's just causing all this chaos, and Verena senses this, and she goes basically with a cleric hit squad and she doesn't want any soldiers, so she has no guards. It's just her and like 6 priestesses, and they like surround this girl, which they are calling a banshee, and they do all this kind of cool cleric stuff, and they like throwing divine spells at her, and this thing is fighting back and lashing back, and eventually Verena is able, and I think some of the priestesses also are getting thrown around and stuff, but Verena is able to subdue this girl and stop this threat. And this is why to this day the feudum no longer collects or takes things in that emerge from the fog. And so they're already like a suspicious people because of stuff that's happened in their past, especially to elves. But on top of this, they're now even more suspicious and like cautious. So it's just a really cool story, because it goes from being like this kind of, oh, we found somebody, to like, oh, this is not good. This is very much Dark Souls, Bloodborne, horrifying stuff, which I've mentioned throughout the feudum videos that I really like, kind of the dark fantasy side of the feudum. That's the aesthetic I like with them. And so I really love Verena. I think she's just a cool character. Her and Morgaine are both really cool. And I like that, like I've mentioned before, Verena and the Sempiternus' kind of conflict. I really think that's kind of a fun thing, and I'm excited to see where that goes. And with that, this lore video about Verena of Aurtigard, High Priestess of Selas, comes to an end. Don't forget to follow this channel to get more Warcrow lore, and if you survive the fog, I'll see you in the next video.